Today we're going to be reviewing Scream, not to be confused with the movie titled Scream. Hello everyone, Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead and like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. After an 11-year hiatus, the Scream franchise has been resurrected, something that we didn't think was going to be happening, as all the other films have been directed by Wes Craven, who, rest in peace, is no longer with us. But the directors of Ready or Not have decided to take the helm and have come up with a script, EP'd by Kevin Williamson, so they still have some of that DNA from the previous films, to come in and bring back the meta slasher franchise that has been sort of curating and percolating for the last 25 years. This movie is a ride. I thoroughly enjoyed this film from start to finish, and I have some minor nitpicks here and there that do not take away from the overall enjoyment that I have for the film. I can safely say that it is fantastic to see Scream in any incarnation back on the big screen once again. For those not in the know, I feel like if you're watching this video, you kind of already are, but for those who are not in the know, Scream is this franchise that is created by director Wes Craven and writer Kevin Williamson, who was doing Dawson's Creek and I Know What You Did Last Summer and all those type of films. He sort of had his hand on like that teen genre for a while there. Came up with this slasher, meta slasher horror genre that sort of took a look inward at horror movies after so many failed attempts at horrors back in the late 90s. And it's become this massive, successful meta franchise. For me, when these movies go full meta and kind of do some social commentary about horror film genre as a whole, I'm all in. That's my wheelhouse. That's when I love it. There are some times when this movie sort of falls into the pitfalls of those meta tropes and becomes more of a parody than it does being in on the joke. I think for me, I know a lot of people love it, but Scream 2 is for me one of the weaker entries into this, because after that opening sequence, which I think is fantastic, and once you take Randy, spoiler alert, off the board, it then starts becoming this very by the book horror movie, which that ending act, the third act for Scream 2 just does not work for me, because it becomes more of what it is sort of always been poking fun at. I'm here to say that Scream 2022 is more in line with the original's tone and self-examining ways. I think it helps that these last two Scream entries have benefited from having pretty large gaps between the film that was previous to them, which allowed the horror genre to sort of change and alter a little bit. And in doing so, it allows a little bit more meat to talk about and what has changed and what is different with requels and sequels and how they're sort of reimagining stuff like the Ghostbusters or like Star Wars, how things that once were are now sort of coming back, and not being a direct sequel, sort of introducing new characters and being a requel and sort of formatting with legacy characters. It is fully aware of all of that, and that is why the title is what it is, and everything sort of, it all plays a part. As meta as you can possibly think that first Scream was, this continues that thread, and I love it. I'm all here for it. We get a new group of teens here led by Sam, who are terrorized by a serial killer, or killers. I'm not spoiling that for you. And once again in Woodsboro. Most of these teens in some form or fashion are like descendants of legacy characters from previous entries. I'm not going to go into who's where and what. I'll let you get into that and enjoy all of that. I'm not doing spoilers for this, by the way. If you haven't noticed, I'm being really dodgy around stuff. Blake and I will be doing a podcast about Scream, and we will get fully into spoilers there. But for here, I'm playing it safe until you guys actually get a chance to see it, because I know some people may be waiting a little more in the week when theaters are not as full. I'm with you, I get it. I just want to get into Sam a little bit. She is interestingly the new Sydney, if you will. I've seen this movie twice, and the first time that I saw it, I did not like her character at all. While I enjoyed the movie, there was something about her character that just didn't work for me. And at the first time, I thought it was because she was too aggressive to folks that she loved, aggressive to some legacy characters. It didn't jive with me. Upon my second watch, I realized it has nothing to do with her as an actress or her character, her per se. It's what's written around her. I'm not going to go into spoilers because it's a very big piece of the film. But there's a hang up I have with she has a secret. Secret is pretty much the precipice of the entire film. The secret itself is fine. Don't have an issue with it. It is a film trope that they give this secret that sort of takes me out of it because it makes me as an audience member who has spent so much time with this franchise from start to finish try to give good characteristics to someone or something that should not have it, and it makes it a bit of a jarring experience that just at moments can take me out of it and make me feel weird about how I'm feeling about someone that I should not have any type of good feelings for whatsoever. A character or thing that is by all marks and decided in this franchise is unredeemable. And so while my attachment is not all on her, it is sort of what the script bogged her down with. But that's not what you're here. If you're here for Scream, you know you're here for the legacy characters. Sydney, Gale, and Dewey. They handle the legacy characters pretty well. I will say that they do not blend these characters in with the script as well as, say, No Way Home did, where No Way Home had specific, like, it was more than just a cameo. It had specific moments. That's not a cameo here. These characters are actually a part of this. But most of our legacy characters don't really come in until the third act. The third act is where they're strong and true. The rest of this film is handled and weighted up by the majority of the team cast. So if you're going in to kind of see that, you're going to be a little uneasy because it's way more teams than it is them. I don't have an issue with that. And it sort of makes sense where these characters are in their lives, why that all happens. I will say that they do give us some very poignant and heartfelt moments that I think anyone who is a fan of this series will appreciate and take to heart and kind of know that that legacy, that storyline is still being serviced well. I also feel that when you have 4 movies that have previously dealt with legacy characters, it's sort of this the way that all of these requels kind of use the cheat code. When you have 4 films, that groundwork of character development is already done so that you can just put these characters sort of on the board and kind of just go. And I think that's sort of what they do. They spend the majority of the time kind of establishing quite a few of the new teams. And then you're like, all right, let's fold in the batter that we've had before. We don't have to do much explaining here. Maybe catch up a couple of loose strings and see where they're at now, but we don't have to do much because you got a whole franchise to kind of catch up on. The thrills and the kills in this are pretty fun. There is a very fun meta use of sound and obstructed views that happen back to back that is just a joy to watch, especially a joy to watch with a full audience because you feel every moment and it's just like, I get what you're doing here. Bravo. This movie is very self-aware, and if you're a Scream fan, you are fully into that. Like this, there's not one thing bad about that for this franchise. I mean, that's sort of the calling card for this. It is known as the meta slasher franchise. There are some pretty violent and bloody deaths, a couple that are going to make you kind of watch through one eye, close your eye, or scream out "oh shit" in the middle of the theater. It is fun. It sucks, and this is why I know that they did not pull this from the theater. One, the box office is going to be in line with all the rest of the openings for Scream. But this is a film that sort of, horror and comedies are films that sort of need to be seen in an audience. And if you have an audience, if you feel safe enough to go in an audience, I think you should, just because that community experience with this film and the legacy of this film, people were clapping when characters come back. It's just, that community works for this type of a film. So I think depending on what you want from a Scream film, this is in the upper tier of those films. I have seen it twice, so it's probably 2 or 3 for me as far as levels. Like 1, the original is still the best, but out of the sequels, this is right there, if not my favorite sequel. My second favorite sequel is right there. And while I have a hang up, and I'll get more into that in the podcast because it's very spoilery, it is not nearly enough to deter me from overall enjoyment of this film. So, on my scale of play it again, Sam, I didn't mind that. Once is enough, or give me a time stone so I never have to think about this film again. This is a play it again, Sam. I've already seen it twice. I'm going to see it again as soon as it comes out on Blu-ray or whatever form of media that people are collecting on now. I still like physical copies. I will purchase this because I thoroughly enjoy this series, and I enjoy this series as a whole. I do hope that they continue with this. I won't say how they could or if they could, but if they do continue on with Scream, I do hope that they continue. It's hard to do this when money is calling, but I do hope that they space this out and give it a little bit more time. Not 11 years. The way things are sped up now, you can probably, horror will probably change again in the next 3 to 4 years. You can kind of start then. But I think you need that sort of window to allow horror to breathe and then come back and make a social commentary on where it's at now. But thanks for listening. What did you guys think about Scream 2022? Go ahead and leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast by the same name that's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that plays podcasts. We are there. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.